what is it that they have that I don't have? What are the things that I need to fill the gaps in and start to get a little bit better at? I was working full-time construction and going to school usually between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. and repeating that cycle over and over and over.
You did something that I strive to do, which is help others. And you said, how can I help you?
It's not about you. It's about the community first. I just remember being awake, and while the car was sliding, I just remember thinking, stay awake, get out of the car, stay awake, get out of the car. That's all I can think of.
Welcome to the show, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me over here. It's great studio and good always to connect with you, brother.
Yes, thank you. I mean, man, we met actually as I was a guest on your awesome podcast, 365 Driven, and then had the privilege of speaking at one of your amazing masterminds in beautiful St. George, Utah, and the beginning of a friendship. I mean, I was so inspired by you and excited about that meeting and that intro that when you invited me to come speak at your event after your show, I was like, yes. And been looking for every reason to hang since. So I'm so glad you made the trip out.
Man, it's been a long run. I think that you were one of the earliest guests. I mean, we're about 300 episodes in on that show, and you were 3 years ago. That's probably probably the first 100. I can't remember what exact episode it was.
Yeah, so I want to obviously dive into the inspiration, but most importantly, and for the audience, because you're one of my favorite kind of entrepreneurs. You have been successful across all different walks that you've walked, and it's not the same. A lot of entrepreneurs are, they repeat something similar in their background, but like me, you've had much more of a scattered background, and I think that demonstrates success formula even better. Mm-hmm. So you started in the oil and gas industry, and then you pivoted to starting your own company. But just to give a little color, take us back to how many years you were in oil and gas and why you left that, and what was the impetus to go from that to essentially the automobile industry. I mean, LS1 Tech. Yeah. So take me back, if you don't mind, to your oil and gas days and kind of, because that seems like a career. That doesn't seem like a short stop.
Right. So probably stems back from watching my dad work in the oil refineries in the Houston area himself after he got out of the military. And when I turned 18, I did that too. I worked as a laborer, a pipe fitter, a welder, did some insulation, some epoxy painting, whatever. I was always doing shutdowns and turnarounds and things like that. And that's how I put myself through college. And so coming from a house where my parents didn't have any money, I had to pay for my own college, and I was going to go for that engineering degree because I wanted to make six figures. And so it took me 7 years. I was working full-time construction and going to school usually between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. and kind of repeating that cycle over and over and over. So really, I got into the industry at age 18, if you think about that, when I was working in those refineries. Now, at some point, maybe in my mid-20s, the offshore oil and gas industry started to recruit me. And I initially didn't want to go because you always hear the horror stories about working on platforms or being gone or, being stuck on ships or working in these remote places of the world. And all of that's true, by the way. All of that is true. It all happened. But the money was a lot better. So it was a lot easier to get to 100, 150 to 200,000 type salary ranges when you go work in those kind of situations. It's a higher risk, higher reward type scenario. And so I also knew that I was looking at a lot of the people that I was working with, especially supervisor levels, and looking at them and realizing that it doesn't really take a lot of intellect to become the boss or the CEO a lot of these times. So it's like, what's the formula? Like you talked about success formula. I started to observe people that were years ahead of me, 10, 20 years ahead of me, and go, what is it that they have that I don't have? What are the things that I need to fill the gaps in and start to get a little bit better at? And communication was one of the main things. The other thing I think a lot of times people just disregard is the psychology, just managing people, being able to read people, being able to communicate, be able to understand that everybody has unique motivations. Not everybody has the same motivation. Leadership skills. These are the things I started to be heavily invested into. And when I was going through engineering and working in oil and gas, eventually as a junior project manager type role, I really just didn't have a creative outlet. I was compensated well, the job was steady, but I'm a creator. I like to build things. I like to draw, paint, build cars from the ground up. Like
ride skateboards.
Ride skateboards nowadays, right? Everything I like to do is artistic and aesthetic and creative and attention to detail. So I started looking for external ways to show that creativity or just do something. And my earliest side businesses were back in the late 90s, probably around 96, 97, when I said, websites are kind of cool. I think websites are almost like artwork that's on a screen. So how do I do that? How do I put what's in my mind on the screen. And so I did like most people back in the mid-90s. I went and bought books on how to code HTML, how to build web pages. And I said, okay, cool. And so I'd get home from my normal job at that point, and I would learn how to code things, just real rudimentary HTML, and it would show up on my screen. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So now I started figuring out how to make buttons work and things like that, interaction on the website. And soon enough, I was like, okay, cool, I can actually build websites. I bet people will pay me for this. And so I was a car guy. I was trying to build my Pontiac Trans Am at the time, and I was spending money on parts just like all car guys. And I said, let me go through these magazines, and I bet I can find a bunch of manufacturers and parts companies that don't have a website, or maybe their website just sucks. And I'll just call them and say, hey, I'll trade you a set of exhaust and headers for a website. And most of them said yes, because they were kind of getting new to the internet thing. And they're like, oh, yeah, we need a website. Or, yeah, our website kind of sucks. Let's do that. So it started out as a bartering system, right? And so eventually I built one car, and I didn't need any new parts for it. So I got another car and a truck. So I needed parts for those too. And so I was building all these websites and things like that. And that's a key there, because I think a lot of times people look for hobbies or skills that they can acquire, but they don't really think about how to monetize those things. And so to me, I was going to spend thousands of dollars on car stuff and car parts no matter what. So why not figure out how to that pay me instead, right?
Especially in automobiles, which traditionally are not investments.
No, they're usually not.
Usually not.
At the lower levels, they're definitely not. But when you start getting into the $60,000, $70,000 type range cars, collector stuff, enthusiast vehicles, you can definitely buy things that go up in value. That's we learned that over the years. But early on, you don't know that kind of stuff. And if you're watching this and you've got hobbies or something you have a lot of passion for, figure out how to monetize those things, because then you get the write-offs, which is not free, but it's like a 25, 30% discount coupon on anything that you're going to buy anyways.
Well, they always say it's easier to save a dollar than make a dollar.
It is.
And so taking advantage of the tax code and learning that is one of the hacks as you're kind of expanding your side hustles, your entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I've made so much more money learning just the tax code than making as much in what I do every day.
Yeah, we don't understand that usually until we're making well into the six figures or the seven figures. I mean, I've known some mid-seven-figure entrepreneurs that didn't understand that, and they were burning cash, like giving it to Uncle Sam every year. I was like, what are you doing? Like, we're not doing anything illegal here, but you're not investing that money back into the company. Like, why are you doing this?
Right.
So the automotive industry for me was a creative outlet. It was a way to fund my hobbies. It's probably very familiar to a lot of people that are watching this. But at some point I said, okay, I'm hanging out on all these forums back then. And I was one of the ones that always content creating. So that's another tip. I think the key to one of my success things is always being the ones contributing value, always being the one answering people's questions. Instead of trying to make it always about yourself, answer people's questions, and then you'll start to build the reputation as someone that's always contributing, right? And eventually the magazines reached out to me. They wanted me to be a featured editor and doing all kinds of things for them. And I was in the media then. And so I was creating more articles and more content and videos on how to make your car go faster, look better, become a better driver, all these different things. And all that stuff is still out there on cyberspace. But at the point when I started to realize is the forum that we were hanging out on wasn't really managed very well. And it had about...
Do you remember the name of it?
That was ls1.com. Actually, the same format, GM Performance Cars.
Yep.
And that website, the guy had maybe at the time 20 advertisers paying $250 a month, $300 a month, and server costs were not that expensive back then, maybe less than $1,000 a month. So we knew he was making a profit. And sometimes we'd go log into his website and it would just be gone. It's like, wow, all those hours that we spent on the how-to articles and creating these things for him, it'd just be gone. It's hard to delete it. It's like, what the hell's going on? And it happened maybe twice in 1 year. We went to him, most of us that were the key contributors, doing it for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say, hey, we see you have advertisers. We know you're making a profit. Why aren't you backing this stuff up? And why aren't you being a steward for the information that we're creating for you to create your own business? And he should have took that as constructive feedback, because we were big supporters of his community. And instead, he kind of threw an attitude. And he's like, well, if you think you could do a better job, you should go start your own website. And here I am, the guy that was already building websites, already knew how to code. I said, the only thing I don't know how to do is set up a server, but that's probably pretty easy. You just go rent one and install the software and do all the little switches and figure out how to configure things the way you like, the way it looks. And so that's what I did. And I took about 10 of the people that were the key contributors And we just went over there and started ls1tech.com. And usually within a month, we had about 10 paying advertisers because we were contributors, right?
Sure.
So it's not like you can just go create something, because had so many competitors in that market. Everybody was trying to do that after they saw us do that. And we became number one. We grew that to over 300,000 registered members. We had about 150 advertising accounts when we sold it. So we monetized through paid ads. We monetized through racing events around the country. And I was always really focused on just building the strong community. And that was by having racing events in these different hotbeds of the country. So you had New Jersey and Los Angeles and Florida and Texas. So we knew where all the people were kind of concentrated. And so we'd go rent out a drag strip and do a car show and get people off their keyboards so they could come look beyond the usernames and start to shake hands and give hugs and talk to the people they've been chatting with online. And I knew that if I could get them to build a strong community in that way, when they got back to their computers, they would still go hang out on the virtual bar, which was my website. And it had nothing to do with me. It was not my ego. I was not the leader and talking about it's all about me and you're all here because I'm super awesome. No, I wanted them to become best friends, even if I wasn't part of that formula. So that's
which I think is something so deep and rich is what you just said, because you led with value and you were willing to allow it to be created without you. As you just said, specifically, even if I'm not part of the formula, you enabled others to build community, relationships, and camaraderie around something that is passionate to you. And that right there is where a lot of people go astray, because they say, no, how do I fit in?
Yeah.
And if I don't fit in, I'm going to force my way in.
Yeah.
And then the community dies. And you lose that human emotion, which is how relationships are built. And that was what I learned about you the first time I met you, was you did something that I strive to do, which is help others. And you said, how can I help you? Who can I introduce you to? Come to my event and speak to my audience so you can get a bigger audience. Those kinds of things are, it seems simple. It seems clear, like, oh, yeah, duh. But it is so hard for a lot of people to do that. So for you to have the foresight, even having had never built your own community, what do you think inspired you to see the world that way? Were you always that way as a kid? Or was that one of those things you learned while you were on the oil fields, learning from the leaders above you?
Man, that's a deep question there. Leadership and community building. I think nowadays it gets clouded because we look at the influencer business model. So when you go on Instagram or your TikTok or your Facebook, and I'm largely guilty of that now because that's the model. That's the game we're playing right now. It's a different set of rules. But here's an example I could share you. I remember when Clubhouse was like a thing in 2020, and so you had all these influencers hanging out on there, and we would get into these rooms about community. And that's when I realized that they didn't understand what community was. They thought community meant followers. And so the difference, or the main distinction between being an influencer versus a community leader, is that it's not about you. It's about the community first. Where influencers are used to having a one-way conversation standing at the top of the pyramid, cascading down, that I'm super awesome, my life is super awesome, I'm pretty, I'm handsome, I got big muscles, I fly a jet, whatever. They're just cascading their message down to the audience. But they're not entertaining or even interested in having a two-way conversation because it's all about them. So it's feeding an ego. We both kind of fall into that sometimes with our content, but that's the game we're playing, like I said. And so where a community builder is different is that, yeah, there's still a pyramid, but it's upside down, and they're holding it above their heads because that's the community. So they're there to make sure that the community thrives, and their sole duty as a community leader is to facilitate the strong bonds and networks and communication with the community members themselves. So if you and you are in my community, I want all three of you guys to be best friends, even if I'm not part of that. So it's no longer about the influencer cascading down message. It's how do I become, you guys keep hanging out at this thing I created because I wanted to have like this restaurant or this bar or virtual place for you to hang out. Like, I'm going to build that for you. I'm going to facilitate things for you guys to become friends. I'm going to have live events so you guys can be friends. And I'm okay over here building that for you, right? And that's what the influencers did not understand. Now, there are certain influencers that do have that kind of community, but it's very rare.
Right.
Usually the bigger their name is, the more they're got layers that you had to get through, and you can't communicate to these people. You send them a DM, and it might as well just be like a ghost town, and tumbleweeds blow through your DM box. So there's a tip there. If you want to become a strong community builder, always make sure you're accessible, not overly accessible, but communicate with your community especially.
Why do you think so many influencers are apprehensive to do that? Create the environment, create the watering hole, the virtual bar or the real bar, but allow it to be created without them. Do you think it's because that their fear is they don't add enough value, so the community will leave once they realize that they're not needed? Or is it something else?
I think it's something else. I think it's self-interest. We all have self-interest, but sometimes people put that as their priority versus the community interest. So if I think about this, we're all on Instagram, we're all on Facebook, we're all on TikTok. The leaders of those communities aren't the face of the company. Like Mark Zuckerberg is not out there creating content every day trying to be an influencer. He's the guy orchestrating how do I build this thing that billions of people keep coming back because it's kind of an addicting thing to hang out with your friends. Instagram, you couldn't even point out the CEO unless you're in the tech space, but they know that, hey, if I build this communities, people will be coming back, they build relationships. So it's thinking at a bigger level where, hey, if I just get enough attention, enough eyeballs into this thing that I'm building, then I can monetize through ads. I can monetize through different things that we're offering, releases. So we're more patient. Community builders are more patient about the result because it takes years. It's not going to be months. It takes years to finally get to that level where then you can turn on the cash flow machine and start figuring out how to monetize.
So how do you know it's working if it takes years? And here I am plugging away. Let's say it's been a year, maybe a year and a half, and I don't have all the results that I would want. But to your point, it's the long game. How do I know that I'm doing the right thing? Because that immediate result gratification, I think, is what stops a lot of people from playing the long game. They don't know that it's working. They feel like it's not. The analogy I use a lot of time is planting a seed, and the roots grow down before it sprouts up. And so we a lot of times pick out that seed and throw it away thinking it's a dead seed or it's not growing, not realizing we actually just built all this great roots. What do you recommend, or how do you stay the course knowing that it's the long game? And obviously now you've done it so many times, but early on, what kept you motivated and realizing, hey, I'm going to keep doing this. It's going to take time, but I'm building this community.
I think this comes back to a purpose question and an intention question. I think if you have the wrong intentions, if your intentions are just to get rich and that's all you're focusing on is money and you're chasing money, well, most things that you chase run away, right? Most things run away when you chase them.
That's right.
And so go back to ls1tech.com. I wasn't building that website to make millions of dollars. That was never the intention. It was just a hobby. It's like, hey, I already know how to build websites. I want to make this cool place for me and my friends to come hang out and talk about cars. That's all I wanted. And I had a job. I'm making six figures at the time. It's like I can afford to pay for that myself. Even if it didn't make a profit, I could have still paid for it because I wanted to have that place. And it started to cash flow and doing really well. And I was making about $400,000 a year profit.
That doesn't suck.
As a side business.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that it was never the intention. And then exiting later for millions of dollars was never the intention, but we built that model with the process and the systems and the right people in place. And all those advertising accounts and all those email addresses that we collected, hundreds of thousands that were very targeted to one specific niche, have a lot of value. And I didn't understand all this stuff when I sold the website. Honestly, I probably left about $1 million on the table, understanding valuation what I do now, because mailing lists that are very target specific are really easy to sell as part of a bigger portfolio if you're a private equity company. And so that's the kind of thing you think about. It's like I created all this stuff not because I was looking at valuation. Now I would look at things a little bit differently, but what was your intention? What was your purpose? That's what always comes back to, right? Like Everbowl, your intention was to make a different version of healthy food that was exciting and people enjoyed it and they could come back and go, oh, this is really cool. Like it's like nothing else.
Yep.
Right? Your business model was like nothing else. I want to be able to build these franchises out for the people that are wanting to create their own entrepreneurship opportunities and be owners of companies, right? So your purpose is always to help. It's always to grow. The money, the financial stuff, the rewards, that just comes as a scorecard, man.
And it always, you're absolutely right. Every time I have ever done something for money, it has never worked out.
No.
Every time I've done it for a different purpose, and I use this analogy, and so that's why I gave you a high five when you said if you chase, because that's how I believe in all things. If you chase things, they run.
Yeah.
If you set up, and you can use the word community, you can use the word trap, you can use the word environment, but if you create an environment that attracts, then you don't have to chase.
Yeah.
If you become a good human being, you will attract amazing people. If you're a hunter and you create an environment that attracts the animal you're hunting, you don't have to chase, right? If you create a company or a situation that attracts money, you don't have to chase it. It comes to you. And I think that's what you did with LS1 Tech. And it was kind of the impetus for your book, which was Side Hustle Millionaire, because, and I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but was the title based on the fact that your side hustle made you a millionaire?
Yeah, it actually wasn't my title originally. I actually wrote that manuscript under The Hustle.
Called The Hustle?
The Hustle was the original manuscript, and it was a pun because I used to be a 9-ball pool player, like collegiate champion, and the hustle and just business, like it's a dual meaning type thing.
What was the movie with Tom Cruise?
That one was Color of Money.
Color of Money? That was you?
One of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
I watched the hell out of that movie back then. Paul Newman and then Tom Cruise.
It was a great movie.
It was a great
It was a remake though, right? Because there was an older one.
I think it's a Martin Scorsese film. It's won several awards, so it's from the 80s. But yeah, good stuff. You know, the interesting about that movie is Tom Cruise didn't even know how to play pool when they cast him. He had to learn to play for that movie, and he became really good at it.
You know what I learned about Tom Cruise? And this goes to show you that even as a multi-gazillionaire that Tom Cruise is,
yeah,
he does all of his own stunts, and he masters them. He will not trade his creative, artistic authenticity and let someone else do it. Right. So when you see fighter jet scenes, he's flying the jet.
And the helicopter.
He's going to space for his movie right now.
What?
His new movie's in like outer, I don't know if it's near Earth orbit or what, but basically he's going to go to space.
I'm not surprised.
For this movie.
He's in physical shape for it.
And talk about someone who works to be the absolute best at what they do. Love him or hate him, because he's definitely a polarizing actor, but the fact that he didn't know pool, he's probably a pretty damn good pool player now.
The racing cars, all that stuff, he had to learn it all. And I love that he puts himself in that situation to do it, because those are life experiences, man.
Yes.
Imagine how cool that would be when he's like 90 years old, if he makes it that time, and he's like, hey, remember that movie where I flew the helicopter? That was actually me.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually me. That was Grandpa. Like, what? Like, that's cool.
He's also like the modern-day MacGyver now.
True.
Because he can do everything.
True.
He's not just an actor.
No.
So it's fascinating. Sorry to
now.
That was just
good topic. Hey, is going all in. That's a great example of
yes.
that, right?
So the Hustle manuscript.
Yeah, actually, our mutual friend Mike Fallett came up with the title, and you know how I am. I'm not braggadocious and always trying to like showboat. And so he read the manuscript. It's like, dude, I love the book. It's going to do really well. I'm like, thank you, man. And he goes, but this title sucks. He goes, so what do you think it should be? He's like, Side Hustle Millionaire. I was like, it sounds pretentious.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds braggy. It sounds in your face. I said, let me sleep on that. And so, okay, next day he calls me and he goes, what do you think, man? Is that title Side Hustle Millionaire? What do you think? It's like, I don't know, man. It's not my personality. He goes, well, which of those words is a lie? Like is false? Is like, did you start it as your side business? Yeah, I always had a business 20 years. I started these businesses. He goes, and you not only made millions while you operated it, but when you sold it, you became a multi. Yeah. And he goes, so which of these words is giving you heartburn? I was like, that makes sense. And in that moment, I realized, Jeff, that it was just me that hadn't grown into that role yet.
Yep.
I was very uncomfortable because I was always the MVP, hiding behind the logo and putting the community first and staying out of the spotlight because I didn't like being on videos or camera or recording my voice, like all that stuff. It was insecurities. I know that now, but I also had all this convenient excuses for not doing the things I'm doing today.
But you also waited till it was done. You know what I mean?
Successful. I have a full-time business, like all the excuses that you guys are watching or listening for not creating content. I had all those excuses. I had all those. And so I realized when he was going through this title discussion with me that I had not become the right person to carry that story yet. Even though it was my story, I had that result. Character-wise, I had not become the right person. I had not evolved enough to become that person to stand on stages, to have confidence to get on microphones or do videos. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, I love fear. I love the adrenaline of that. It's like, man, I've come up with a new fear. I'm kind of confronting this now. I just avoided it. I used excuses, but now I'm confronting it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do I get over this? How do I fix this? That's the question. So, okay, I don't like public speaking, so let me figure this out. What do I do? What do you do? Go join Toastmasters, show up every week, deliver a speech once a month, and just participate. It's like, oh, cool, I could do that. I'll do that. Go hire a speaking coach. They'll tell you what you're doing well and things you can work on, how to get your vocal inflections, your eye contact, your gestures. Quit saying quit saying like. I can do that too. So there's solutions to all these challenges that we face. We just avoid them because of fear. It's uncomfortable. And I realized that I had to go become the right person to carry that story. I had to become the right person to carry that title. And for the first couple of years after that book came out, I would be introduced as, here's Tony Whatley, the side hustle millionaire. I actually became that person, and I was confident in that person. So that's a tip there, is like, you may not be the right person right now, and that's okay, but how do you get to be that right person?
Yeah. So that book launched in what year?
2018.
2018, and you sold LS1 Tech in
2007.
So there was a long period between the sale of LS1 Tech and the launch of Side Hustle Millionaire.
Yes.
What was your focus from 2007 to 2018?
2007 to 2018, I think that I was 34, had all this money in the bank. My health started to fade, got kind of lazy, started hanging around with other people with high net worth that really like just kind of, we're all like, it's weird about being rich, dude. It's really being weird, okay? Because you get in these circles of people and they all feel like they don't deserve to be there. No matter how rich you get into another circle that people have a little bit higher net worth, but everybody kind of feels like they don't belong there, and they're hoping that they don't get discovered. Isn't that weird? It's just weird.
So you just pointed, I've been thinking about this a lot because this show has allowed me to now interview a lot of my friends and new people. And there's a common theme that I have found between highly successful and wealthy people. We all share. It's imposter syndrome.
Always.
And I never put my finger on it. I never identified it because I have that feeling. I mean, I had that feeling as a parent. I was a young parent. You know, my daughter, I just turned 40. She's 17. She'll be 18 in 6 months. For 10 years, when she was kind of at that age of like 8 to now, we'd be around other families doing events, whatever. And I always felt like an imposter. Like do they think I'm just playing dad?
Yes.
Am I a real dad?
Nobody has it figured out.
But I always had that feeling as a parent, in business, around in high net worth circles, even in sporting things. Anytime I've had success, I've always had that feeling like,
do I belong?
And is this going to last?
Yeah.
So it's just funny you say that because
everybody believes that. Everybody feels that way. And I would say between 35 and 39, it was actually my lowest physical condition. And I had all the high school football injury excuses and like, lower back pain and my left shoulder, right knee, like all that stuff. And I did have those aches and pains, and my wife, Lisa, standing there, she always went to the gym and she always like would encourage me, but she never forced me. And I just kind of got lazy and I gained weight. And at 39, when you just turned 40, it's a very milestone birthday.
Yes.
Right. And so you become more reflective. You start to look back on your life. You start to think about what I could have done better. And you start to think about legacy and purpose and things like that. At about 40 is where it starts to happen. And in my mind, I always felt like I was still that athlete from my youth. But every time I looked in the mirror, I was confronted with the reality that, man, I got man boobs and my arms are gone and I got this belly. It's like, am I 7 months pregnant or 8th month pregnant today? like you just kind of look at yourself and mentally you feel like you're that young person that can still do everything. And then you look at the reality and you're like, dude, like what's going on? And then you start to really look at the circle of people you hang around.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize like, oh, fuck, they're all the same way. They're all the same way. We're all volleying the excuses back and forth. Oh, we don't heal like we used to. Let me serve that one to you. You serve it back. Oh, yeah, man. You know, it's just, it's just the good old days, like serve it back over there. So we validate each other's bullshit back and forth. We hang out with the wrong people. And even at high net worth, like this still occurs, right?
It almost occurs more because purpose is gone.
Yeah, because you made it.
And you have time to dwell in it.
And we always feel like we overshot our potential. You know, when you finally start making good money, you realize like, man, I'm very grateful to be here. I never expected to have this. And that's true. Unless you grew up rich, like you never expected to have that. So you think, did I get lucky? Did I just catch fire and lightning in a bottle that one time? Or, you know, but like you mentioned earlier at this show, the habits and the repeated things, you start to see like there's certain reasons that we do what we do and we can repeat it over and over. But dude, it's so 30s was kind of like I didn't do much, man. I was focused on the executive path in oil and gas, and I was kind of on that trajectory. And I was like, okay, I mean, I got money in the bank. I'll eventually become a vice president or CEO, make $400,000 a year, and have $1 million a year in perks.
So you didn't quit after you sold LS1 Tech?
No, I didn't
Kept
have
going.
to. I didn't have to.
You still loved what you were doing?
I enjoyed it, man. I get to play with hundreds of millions of dollars and learn about processes and systems and, all the different risk mitigations. And I was working on mostly the highest techno. We're going deep water. So I was always on the cutting edge of technology. And, we're thinking about deep water and oil and gas was like into space, high pressure, low temperature. So I got to learn, understand all these different things about different countries and diplomatic things and political things and bribery and all kinds of stuff that's illegal. Like I learned all kinds of stuff. And I was like, wow, like this really goes on. Yeah, but we don't call it that. We call it an expediting fee. And we just cut a PO for that. That's all.
Right.
And don't ask what's in that. So, so I learned a lot about big business. Most of my operations and the projects I was managing, I usually had about $1 million a day burn rate on operations. So you make one fuck up and it's a costly mistake. You're going to burn $10 million trying to fix things. So I learned to desensitize myself when it came to money and dollars and commas. And so nowadays I kind of watch social media and I see people talking about 7-figure, 8-figure this. And it's like, I get it. They're doing the marketing with the revenue marketing is what I call it for the marketers. But I'm also thinking to myself, dude, I've written purchase orders bigger than your company.
Sure.
So I don't have an emotional like, oh, that's a big number. I did have that in my 20s.
Yeah.
When I managed my first $1 million project, I was like, oh shit, like this is a lot of money. I'm super scared. And eventually you just kind of get numb to it and you realize that operations is operations, scale is scale. You're still going to make hopefully the right decisions regardless of the revenue or the budget or any of those kind of things. So there's always the better answer, understanding, hey, where's the risk mitigation? Is this leading me closer to the goal or the project delivery, or is this going further away, or is this elevating risk? How much risk? Are we looking at a calendar delay? Are we looking at a financial delay? Or so impacts. And if you're assessing all of your decisions in business the same way, regardless of the dollar value, if you can remove that emotion, you're going to make better decisions. I think early entrepreneurs, 7 and 8 figures especially, they're still in that emotional phase, man. They're still looking about, it's a lot of money. And they're looking at it from their own perspective. Let's say that you've got a $20 million company, but you're very uncomfortable spending $100,000. You're going to make decisions based on your own personal risk tolerance, even though you've got a very large company. And that emotional judgment can usually lead you down the wrong path.
I mean, it's true. And it's the splash of reality, which is the wall that so many hit, right? Because when they get and taste that little bit of success and they have that feeling, and then they're in these circles where they've lost purpose. They're not sure what to do next. So they end up trading their health. I mean, some of the most unhealthy people I know are the wealthiest.
Yes.
And it's a damn shame because they actually have the resources and the time and the freedom to hit all of them. And success to me is a 360 degree of success. If you are extremely out of shape and you take your health for granted and have billions of dollars, you're not successful. You're financially successful and you're going to die. You're going to die early. You're going to leave your family, unfortunately, early. You're not going to make the impact in society that you could make. Yeah, you've made money. And I think we falsely attribute success in finances as the same. They're not. They shouldn't be.
No. It's one leg of the stool.
So when did you leave the oil and gas industry?
2015.
2015.
Yeah, 2015, there was an industry downturn going on. I was laid off. I knew that I was going to be laid off about 9 months earlier because we were finishing out a project in Africa. And so they said, hey, as soon as we hit first oil in Africa, we don't have any other projects behind this one for you guys, so you're probably all going to get laid off. And we kind of knew that, but we still gave it our best, and we had first oil before the contract date, so it was a successful project, multi-billion-dollar project. And we got laid off. I was actually in Paris, France when my supervisor laid me off. I was debriefing the contractor from that project, and she called me up and she goes, oh, I forgot to tell you, today's your last day. It's like, what? I haven't even made it back to Houston yet. It's like, I don't even get to go clean my office or what? I don't get to say goodbye to the team in Houston. And she's like, no, I'm sorry about that. And so Lisa happened to be over there, and we just said, okay, well, can I extend my return ticket out a couple weeks. I'll just hang out in Paris and France and go hang out for a few weeks. And she's like, yeah, no problem. So we spent 2 weeks driving around France and drinking wine and visiting the country and just kind of decompressing. She had also left the industry, my wife, at the same time from oil and gas. And that was like a 2-week period of like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And in corporate, what you find is that too many people start to think about their company is good at fooling them. They think they care about them. And then the higher you move up on the organizational chart, you start to realize like that's all a lie. Like they tell you what they think you want to hear to keep you there. But when there's layoff periods, you start to see like there's some really illegal things that happen in the layoffs, because we could talk about ageism, racism, all these things that are unwritten. You never see it in writing, but those conversations still go on in the background from the people that are making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so, no, Sam over there, he's 10 years from retirement. If we lay him off early, he'll only get 80% of his pension, even though he's been here 20 years. That'll save the company a lot of money. And you're like, dude's giving you 20 plus years of this company to build that pension. He thought he was going to retire here, and they're going to cut his knees out. Yeah, it's just what we have to do.
It's business.
It's just business.
Yeah.
And so all these companies that have their core values and like, rah, 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 we're treating everybody right. They say that until the very end and something happens. And so I saw too many situations of that. And it got to be where my name had to be signed on those agreements to kind of move forward for those actions. And it's like, I don't like this anymore. It's like the closer we get to the top, the more truth we see. And you start to realize like these companies are just full of shit. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to an industry that I'm going to keep climbing and it's going to become more bigger pieces of shit when I get it to the top. And so I started thinking about what can I do that I enjoy? And I didn't have the answers back then. I didn't really have the answers until 2017 when I started to think about coaching and writing the book and things like that I'm doing now. But, looking back at that, I also compounded that 2015 with a wreck. I was racing cars and I had a near-death experience in late 2015. I hit a concrete wall at 130 miles per hour at the drag strip. And that creates a whole series of questions on its own.
Well, we can't end with that. So you got to tell me how. Obviously, I know you survived, but broken bones.
No, I had no injury. I had my safety gear on, but here's the weird thing about it, Jeff. When I was approaching that wall, I thought to myself, here I go. I actually said that to myself, well, here I go. And you think like from the movies and TV, whenever people are facing something what they think is in their near death, that they're in panic mode or they're scared or they're freaked out or things like that. And in that moment, I was actually really calm. I was very peaceful in that moment. It was just a really weird feeling. Well, here I go. So that's what I said to myself. And impact happened, of course, and the front of the car got caved in all the way to the front of the windshield. And I had to pry the door open to get out. But I had my helmet on, I had my safety gear on, and I had no injuries. I was a little sore for a few weeks after that, but the series of questions occurred actually at that track when I was in the back of the ambulance. Doors are still open. I'm looking out the back doors, and I could see the wreckage. There's wheels off the car. There's fluid strewn for hundreds and hundreds of feet. I was about 130 miles per hour, so I was moving at near the quarter mile. And I started thinking to myself in that moment, it's like, what if I would have died right there? Like, what if I would have died? And it's like that, shit, that sucks. And then the next question most people think about is, well, how would I have been remembered?
Right.
How would I be remembered if I would have died right there? Answer came to me really quickly, because we assess ourselves again against our circles or people we knew, maybe people who recently passed. How was so-and-so remembered? How was so-and-so? Okay, yeah, we're kind of the same. And so it would have been nice, rich guy, cool cars, gone too soon. Because those are the repeated phrases I saw from my network. Nice, rich guy, cool cars, gone too soon. It's like, is that good enough? Is that really good enough? Dude, no way, dude.
Yeah.
That's not good enough. That is not good enough. It's not bad, but it's not good enough, because it left me thinking that
it's average.
It's average.
I mean, if I'm being honest, it's average.
Circle. That's our circles, right? So the thing that was missing was the impact. How do you create more impact? And I didn't have that answer for another 2 years. And I started thinking about how do I impact? Do I create a nonprofit? Do I just go be a philanthropist? There's so many options, and there's no right answer. What I learned in that process for that 2 years, and luckily I was in a financial position to be able to put myself and do that, I started thinking about what is it that people are always asking your advice on? always. And whether that's family or close friends, people in your circle, like what are they always asking you for advice on? And for me, it was always business because they always saw that I had a really extensive lifestyle outside of my salary. So they're kind of curious, like, what's going on over there? Like, how do you have all these cars and big house and all that? Like, I was like, well, this is kind of my part-time income, this engineering salary. Like,
Right.
It's my part-time.
It's my hobby.
Income.
I just get paid a little bit for it.
It takes more of my time, but pays me less. But over here is what I do. Like, oh, wow. So I've helped 12 of my former friends and staff members build 7, 8, and 9-figure companies over 15 years. Some of them have some 8-figure exits already. You know, they're younger than me. They used to work for me. And so I said, dude, I've always helped the people in my close proximity because I didn't want to be in the showboat thing. I didn't want to put myself out there. If you knew me, you got the benefits of that. And so I said, that's it. I think my strongest impact will be to teach people confidence in business principles. That's the things that people keep asking me for. And so although it was mostly focused in the automotive industries and the oil and gas industries and manufacturing industries, it's like, dude, all the things I teach apply to every business. Business is business. And if you're coming to me to learn your specialty, then you probably shouldn't be in that business.
Correct.
I'm going to teach you the foundations and all the processes and systems and manufacturing and leadership and all these, but you don't come to me with your specialty. Like, that's the thing that you need to bring to the table. Like, I'm going to teach you to do the business side of it, right? And so that's where I started deciding, well, maybe I'll write a book. That'll be the easiest way to get it out there. I'll just write this book, and if it does good, okay. If not, I tried. Gosh darn it, I tried. And yeah, I sold 1,000 copies in the first week, and it's gone on to sell thousands more. And that launched the podcast, and kind of just grew from there, man.
And the podcast, 365 Driven. First of all, the message, the name, I love, because one of my success principles is, I have my core values. They're clear, and I am laser focused on them. But the underlying tone of them is 365 driven. You bring your best every single day because you're on this earth. You don't get the day back. We don't get April 23rd, 2023 ever again, or March 9th, 2022 ever again. You get one shot at it.
Yeah.
There's no do-overs. And so often we just cave it in. Well, you know what? I'm tired. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And you add up all those days that you didn't take advantage. It makes success so easy because 99% of people don't bring it every day. So if you just bring it every day, you win by sheer volume. You don't have to be very good.
No, you don't. Consistency over time yields results. Always,
So I'm looking up at because I wrote down from you what your core values are. And I'm going to read a couple of them because the ones that stood out to me. And the one is my favorite is give more often than you ask. Explain that to me in your own words.
I think if you make a life of always helping other people, that when it is your time to ask for something, you're going to get more support. I see a lot of times people, even on your social media, like, dude, you and I get a shit ton of friend requests, right? We get a shit ton of them. And if I go look at your social media page and all I see is your face, that tells me a lot about you because you're only focused on yourself. Now, if you're promoting your friends or you've got this podcast, if I don't see your guests' faces on there, it's like, why would you miss that opportunity? Because they're going to share that stuff if they can see that they're part of it. And so even with your social media, if I go to like your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed and all you're doing is pitching or trying to sell something or marketing, you're marketing, and it's always like some kind of a lead gen opportunity. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to have you in my circle because you are literally asking more than you give. And then you got all these people out there that think that they're giving you advice when it's very generalized shit that's not specific to anything. And they go, hey, if you want more, here's my mailing list or join my course. No, guys, like, give your best content out there. You do this, I do this. We'll give you the best content that we have, all the tactics, all the strategies. But where we want you to pay or join is access. You got to come to my events. Yeah, they're not free because they cost a lot of money to produce these events. If you want to be in the coaching space, yeah, that's my time. Like, it's access. You can ask me more specific questions. So I see a lot of people with this gatekeeper mentality of like giving you vague shit, thinking that you'll pay to get the real stuff. It's like, no, give them the real stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I speak on stages And people ask me, what do I charge? And my answer is yes.
You do.
Meaning, if you offer me money, I'll say yes. If you tell me you don't have a budget, I'll also say yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I want everyone to just ask me to do it for free. But the point is, some people just don't have budgets. Yeah. And if you're launching your first mastermind or your first group, or you have an event and you don't have a budget, but I can impact lives, I'm not worrying about it.
No.
I don't. When you've made enough money, what am I going to do with $5,000, $10,000, $15,000? I'm going to put it in the bank and it's going to get lost with the rest.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to connect with 100 people. I'm going to make friends with 100 people. And if I impact them and empower them and enable them to be the best version of themselves, and I'm part of that journey, number one, I'll probably make more money off the back end just because they'll hire me to speak at something or et cetera. But number two, it fills my cup up so much more.
Totally, dude.
And so that's why one of your other core values, which is my absolute favorite one, is strive to become a better version of yourself. Because mine is Kaizen, get 1% better every day. And that's one of my non-negotiables. That if I can't figure out how to be a little bit better today, and I don't plan for that, then I failed today. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite ones for you. But how did you come up with that one for yourself?
First of all, Kaizen's, I'm half Japanese, so I'm all in on that one.
Yep.
I know that one. That's their manufacturing process. People wonder how Japan became a manufacturing powerhouse. Kaizen.
Toyota.
Always doing the best, always doing an improvement every day. And, the thing is that you should always think, man, there's so many analogies. I'll go with the race car one, okay? When I was drag racing more, usually in my 20s and 30s, you're racing to a finish line. You're both competing to get to that finish line. And once you get your car dialed in, it's pretty consistent. And once you get your driving dialed in, it's pretty consistent. You get down to 100th, 1,000th of a second. It's just, it's repeatable. It's repeatable. So if you line up, you kind of know what the guy next to you already has. And if you have enough or not. So that was fun. It was adrenaline rush, 9 seconds and stuff like that. It's like, cool. But once I started getting into road racing, road course, doing laps with a lap timer in my car, different cars, I became more excited by that because I started to realize that doing laps on a racetrack is like personal development, because you're only racing yourself unless you're in a real actual race. Like if I'm just going out there and going 9/10 out of a sports car with a lap timer, I can see my splits about every quarter of the track and understand if I'm ahead or behind my last lap. And so you start to realize, like, this is just improving my driving skills, my confidence, my fear management, and how I can just kind of get around this track a little faster. So if I can get a better lap time over and over and over, the car is mechanical. It's pretty much going to be the same unless your brakes fade or your tires go out. And so it becomes this lesson of trying to beat your own record, right? And so that's the message you're talking about, is how do we improve over and over? And there's a lot of things that we do in our lives, like going to the gym. If you're lifting a little bit more this month than you did last month, that means you made some improvements, right? So there's always things that we can measure, and don't be afraid to evolve or also reinvent yourself. I mean, that was one of the things when we started off with the show, was reinventing yourself, like doing different industries. That's when you prove that you can do something, because you got to take these skill sets and the knowledge and also the work ethic and the discipline and apply it to different situations. You talked about fitness and business. They're complete opposites. I agree with that. Like if you're a morbidly obese billionaire, I don't want to trade places with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have my health, because you can't buy that once you lose it, right? And so improve every day. And I'm not talking about giant steps. It's just little things, even with a podcast. When we go on stage or we do a podcast interview, you notice that we respond with a lot of stories, because stories are more compelling. And you may not remember my name, but I hope you remember some of the stories. But even as a personal level to that, when I tell the same story twice, I always try to tell it a little bit better the next time. So my goal with every interview and every stage event, no matter how big the audience is, I want to do it a little bit better than I did before, always. So if I tell you the same story and I think about, man, last time I told that story, I did this, or I left this detail out, how can I make that a little bit more impactful? Maybe I add one of the senses, the sight, the touch, the smell, the sound. Maybe I interlace one of those to give you a little bit more vivid detail. Like there's certain things we can do to improve. And the way you think about that just really translates to everything in your life.
What did it smell like when you hit the wall at 130 miles an hour?
Airbag dust. The entire cabin just filled out with this white powdery dust, and you couldn't really see it. Just like a cloud of smoke inside that room. Because I guess the airbags are packed with some kind of powder, and it was everywhere. It's like, oh man, I don't know if I can breathe. My whole focus after making that impact was that, cool, I'm still alive. Shit, I need to get out of this car. Like, it's still sliding, right? Terrible noise. Like, you feel the whole car coming apart, and you don't know, like, if you're injured or not. You just know you're alive. And through race training, I realized that most people don't die from the impact. They die from fire. Because think about this: brake fluid, your transmission fluid, your differential fluid, gasoline, all of those are everything's flammable, and you got sparks literally occurring everywhere. So you're a fireball, and if one of those sparks decides to kick off one of those fluids, you're in a fireball. So most people are knocked out when they impact, but then the fire just consumes them. So I just remember being awake, and while the car was sliding, I just remember thinking, stay awake, get out of the car, stay awake, get out of the car. That's all I can think about.
Scary. So my last train of thought and question for you is about your Community 365 driven, because I'm a big fan of it. I'm a member of it. I follow you. I follow your community. I'm not as involved as I want to be, but I'm definitely involved in paying attention and watching and supporting. And for those listening and watching that are saying, you know what, man, like what Tony's talking about, that resonates with me. Like, I need to be 365 driven. I need to be the best version of myself. And there's so many valuable lessons and tactics and traits that I can pick up from being a part of that. What do you, if I'm coming in and I'm a new member in the 365 driven community, I find you either through the podcast or through your coaching, what do you want me to get out of it? What is the message that if I learn or I walk away with this, the community did its job for me and I did my job as a viable member?
I would say the overarching theme from just observing the people in the community and how they've transformed is expanding the belief in what's possible for yourself, because the imposter syndrome, the self-limiting beliefs, the not knowing any better, all these different things. We create these artificial glass ceilings in our earning potential, our leadership potential. We think to ourselves, like, why would anybody listen to me? Why would anybody read my book? Why would anyone care about what I'm doing? I'm just small. I haven't accomplished all these things. I'm not influencer. I'm not rich. Like, starting business is an understanding of the death traps that occur and getting into the wrong partnerships and stuff like that. So I really instill confidence and belief in people, and that leads ultimately to freedom. So when people ask me, like, what do you sell or what do you provide? Yeah, it's business lessons, it's personal development lessons, it's performance coaching for you executives and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's freedom. And I don't think about just financial freedom. That's the one leg thing, right? A lot of people achieve that. And I think largely it has to do with men and women, how we're judged in society. Women tend to be judged by their aesthetics and how they appear. Men, it's always about their wealth. If more men were also judged by their aesthetics, I think that you'd see a lot more people that were in physical shape and wealthy.
Yep.
Right? And you'd also, for women, if they was judged on wealth, you'd see a lot more women who are physically fit and wealthy. So society has created this weird dynamic that you do this and you do that and you go excel at that and no one else matters, because they're rewarded for both of those bad behaviors, right? And so freedom to me it's financial freedom, but it's also time freedom, location freedom, and more importantly, mental freedom. And I think that most people will never experience the mental freedom. That's the thing I really focus on. And it's not really the mental health thing, it's the mental confidence. And I didn't even understand mental freedom until my 40s, really. And so, yeah, I had the millions of dollars and I did all the successful things and I got back in shape, but I didn't understand what mental freedom was until I started to put a finger on it, really probably in my mid to late 40s. And what mental freedom is having enough confidence and understanding that your purpose and your message is far more important than your fear of sharing it. Because I wish that I would have had someone like myself that could have gave me that advice in my 20s. To be like, dude, there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be people that say negative things about you, no matter what. It's what goes back to your intention and your purpose. For being a dirtbag, you deserve that backlash. If your purpose is negative, you deserve that backlash.
Mm-hmm.
We got to fix that. So if I can just get people to understand what freedom is, that fourth part, like I can get you the financial freedom. I think that's the easiest part. I really do think that's the easiest part. The next one is the time and location freedom. A lot of entrepreneurs are stuck in that. They don't have that. They've got a very successful business on paper, but they can't even take a vacation. They feel like their company is going to implode, or they can't get anything done without them being there. Like, you don't have the time and location freedom at that point. So we can work on that by processes and systems, understand how to scale properly and also scale your profit at the same time. The mental freedom comes, it's an internal thing, man. How do you become so confident with your words that you're willing to put them out there and not fear judgment? How do you worry about nothing about these critics and the people that are not in your space, or people are not going to support you anyways? Understand that's just part of the game. And being able to put that out there and not worried about your client firing you or losing your job and these kind of things. So there's a lot of highly successful people that can't say what they truly want to say. They don't have the mental freedom, man.
Well, if that didn't resonate with you the same way it resonated with me, then you need to also take a step back and say, okay, what do I want out of life? Because if you don't have all those pillars of freedom, I'm telling you, I upped my game when I met you. I've been a fan. I watch you. I observe. I pay attention. I'm learning. Your community is incredible. You bring great people together. And Tony really is a living example of what he's talking about here. And I can speak from personal experience. This isn't someone I just met today. I've known Tony for years. And if you're not going to take that first step on your own, I recommend you join the 365 Driven community. Go to one of his events, those 365 Driven Advance.
Yeah, yeah. Because we don't retreat.
That's right. We don't retreat. And that was the coolest thing. Quick side story. This was COVID. And, I had been really launched my speaking a lot. And you had asked me to speak. And I remember calling you because COVID was just really at, we must have been 3-4 months into COVID. And I said, Tony, is this event happening? And you said, yeah. And it's called Advance because we're not retreating. And we have to improve and we have to advance always, even in the face of fear, even in the face of uncertainty. And I think that is such a cool thing, that it is not a retreat. It's an advance. And so I've grown through you. I value your friendship. I value everything you've done and accomplished. You're an inspiration, man. I want to thank you for coming on the show. And I hope everyone listening joins, because if you join his community, you'll be joining me as well as amazing other humans, and everyone that's been around you is better for it. So, man, I want to thank you so much.
Man, I'm going to try my best to live up to all those words, and I appreciate everything you do, man, and appreciate this opportunity to come meet your audience as well.
Well, thank you.
Right.
Hey, everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.